Hey, I'm Mark. Let's go. We got work to do. Still teaching classes online. Don't tell my principal. I should be teaching a U.S. history class right now. But that's all right. You know why? Because I'm a history teacher and I'm going rogue. If you've watched my channel before, and many of you have, thank you very much, you know how much I value tradition. You know how much I value rivalry. You know how much I value history. Last time we talked about Conferexit, how conferences chasing big money have destroyed tradition, have destroyed rivalries, have destroyed history, how the convoluted efforts to cobble together 15 or 16 teams into one conference have really watered down conferences, where you don't play anyone, where the two best teams might not even meet in the conference championship game. Bigger is not better, better is better. 10 teams, everybody plays everybody, round robin. No one gets a pass just because they're in a weaker division. Not Wisconsin, not Clemson, not Georgia. 10 teams. 10. If you have to take your shoes off to count them, that's too many. 10 teams. A lot of people have their own plans for a conference realignment. Even people sitting at professional-looking desks with big microphones in front of them and big banners behind them. They even look like they're doing the work of a conference or of a major network. Ultimately, it just seems like a lot of people are just putting a big grid over a map of the United States and saying, okay, all the schools in this square are in this conference and all the schools in this square are in this conference. It just doesn't take care of the nuances and the thinking that are going on in the big conferences around the country. I try to deal in reality, trying to get into the mind of these conference presidents and these university presidents and what they're thinking. Memphis has good football and good basketball, and it makes regional sense. But the Tigers aren't ever going to be invited to the SEC. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, they don't want to have to compete with another team in that recruiting area. Tulsa will never get an invite to the Big 12 for the same reason. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State compete enough within the state of Oklahoma. Ohio State will never allow the B1G to invite Cincinnati, and Penn State will never allow the B1G to invite Pitt. And don't count on Penn State ever leaving the B1G to join Pitt and its other buddies from the 1970s. There is way too much money for that transaction. I mean, outside of extenuating circumstances. Extenuating circumstances. My last video, and again, thanks for watching, I appreciate that, suggested a breakup of an entirely watered down Atlantic Coast Conference with 15 teams and divisions that hardly see the other members. I would hope that it would be a mutual transition, with the 4 northernmost members becoming the basis of a newly rebranded Metro Conference or Big East Conference. For this video, let's go west. Let's look at the Pac-12 and the Big 12. Let's go rogue. It was only a couple of years ago that a lot of college football pundits were talking about the demise of the Big 12. They were the weak sister because they only had 10 teams. And the NCAA Politburo had issued a diktat saying that a conference could only have a championship game if it had 12 teams. Well, since the NCAA has reversed the diktat, the Big 12 has done well. Play everyone. The top 2 teams play in the conference championship game. Now, the problem, of course, is that you got to beat a good team twice. That's too bad. If you want to be a champion, you're going to have to act like a champion. And I like what the Big 12 does. I just don't like the name. And there is that 1,500-mile trip that fans got to take out to West Virginia every year. And Mountaineer fans, they've got to buy plane tickets to go to Waco or Lubbock. That's not easy to do. In my last video, I suggested that West Virginia move back to its old friends and its old stomping grounds in a renewed Metro Conference. But this move could only be predicated by a counter-poaching by the Big 12. And as much as we'd all like to see Houston back with its Texas mates in the Big 12, that ain't gonna happen. As long as Oklahoma's in the conference, they don't want anything that tilts the conference in any way anymore towards the state of Texas. A great move by the Big XII would be to try and poach Arkansas from the SEC. It reestablishes a long-defunct rivalry with Texas. That's the game that President Richard Nixon went to in 1971. 1 versus 2. Texas versus Arkansas. Make Texas and Arkansas the day after Thanksgiving game. It also brings back some long-dormant SWC rivalries with Texas Christian, with Baylor, and with the Texas Institute of Technology. More upside for Arkansas. You're only 240 miles from a great college football game against the University of Oklahoma, and only 180 miles to another great college football game against Oklahoma State. It's an 8.5-hour drive to Baton Rouge. Hell, Arkansas, the way the SEC has treated you, I'd jump on that deal. But seriously, doesn't an annual game against the University of Texas and the University of Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, doesn't that intrigue you in some way? Let me know in the comments. Now, there's one thing that stands in the way of that move, and that's the Pac-12. So the Pac-12 is an anomaly among the conferences. Sits out there on the West Coast, Pacific time zone, with no other conferences nearby. So it can't just go out and poach another team from, say, the Big 12 or from the SEC. It's kind of got to act on its own. I saw an article that suggested that the Big 12 tried to poach Arizona and Arizona State. Good luck with that. Utah gives the Pac-12 a huge boost, having won the Southern Division 4 different times. Colorado hasn't provided the conference the same boost. If you look at how the Pac-12 operates, it's a 12-team conference split up into 2 divisions. But there's some nuance involved in how the Pac-12 schedules its games. The original scheduling plan for the Pac-12 put the 4 California schools in 2 separate divisions. So even though those schools are in 2 separate divisions, the Pac-10 schedules so that Cal, Stanford, USC, UCLA play each other every year. The teams from further north and the teams from further south, they schedule around the California schools. It's not like Washington's got a great rivalry with Arizona or Colorado anyway. But now we have the elephant in the room. Perception is reality. And the perception is that USC is so far beyond the rest of the Pac-12. One of my great memories was going to the 1992 Freedom Bowl in Anaheim with my brother. My Fresno State Bulldogs taking on the University of Spoiled Children. I hate entitlement. It was a dark and stormy night, but it was hot in the Fresno section of Anaheim Stadium. 24-7, baby. But I digress. The loss caused a certain amount of consternation among USC fans and USC alumni. USC head coach Larry Smith caused further furor by stating that names and logos don't mean anything. You don't beat someone just because of your name and your logo. Within days after his Freedom Bowl loss and his Freedom Bowl commentary, Larry Smith was fired. Names and logos do matter when it comes to USC. What has USC done in the years since Pac-12 expansion in 2011? Well, they've won the South Division 3 times. They've won the conference championship once in 2017. Overall, they're a respectable 78-40, 57-26 in the conference. That's behind Oregon's 89-31 conference record, 60-24 in the Pac-12, and behind Stanford's 86-34 overall record, 61-24 in the conference. Ed Ogeron. First, he carries Sandra Bullock in the movie The Blind Side. Not literally, but he could if he wanted to, but probably wouldn't be recommended. But he basically made the movie The Blind Side. Then he's hired as an assistant coach under Lane Kiffin at USC. When Kiffin got fired in 2013, he was hired as the interim head coach. But he wasn't hired the next season. He was passed over before Steve Sarkisian. Sarkisian was fired in 2015 for having troubles with alcohol. Ed Ogeron was hired at LSU and won a national championship. Good call, SC. So what's your point, Haggard? Oh yeah, the elephant in the room. USC is good, but less than dominant. Nevertheless, it's not about wins on the field, it's about eyes on television. The Pac-12 made out worse of the Power 5 conferences in the last round of TV contract negotiations. It has also made out the worst in the college football playoff. They've only sent 2 teams to the CFP in the 6 years of its existence, and neither time was at USC. Nevertheless, the president of less than dominant USC is threatening to go independent, to take USC out of the Pac-12 conference. It's tired of revenue sharing with other schools like Oregon State and Washington State. Peons. And, in all honesty, a 4-7 USC is still probably a better draw than a 10-1 Washington State or Oregon State. And Snoop Dogg. That's just the way it is. I still hate entitlement, but truth be told, Pac-12 needs USC more than USC needs the Pac-12. The conference has 2 options. First option is to induce USC to stay in the Pac-12 with a bigger piece of the compensation package. That might tick off the rest of the schools in the conference, but the alternative is worse. If the conference doesn't create an arrangement that's suitable to USC, USC might bolt the conference and start the conference realignment carousel. The most important relationship in the Pac-12 is between USC and UCLA. I suppose UCLA could stay in the Pac-12, but who's it going to pair up with? I suppose they could adopt San Diego State. No, they can't. If UCLA goes with USC, then the Pac-12 just lost the West Coast's most important market. Would Cal and Stanford go on without their counterparts in Southern California? I doubt it. Therefore, the USC defection holes out the entire center of the Pacific 12 Conference. Enter Texas and Oklahoma, 2 schools that, like USC, are the biggest brands in the Big 12 Conference, having to share revenue with Iowa State and Kansas State. How could a free agent USC not be attractive to Texas and Oklahoma? Bring UCLA alongside because UCLA, Stanford, and the University of California, Oregon and Washington? Would anybody really miss the Apple Cup game? Or the Civil War? My UW friends tell me that their hatred for Oregon is much higher than their hatred for the Cougs. That's a solid 8-team conference. Let's round it out. You want to create a solid basketball conference to go along with football? How about Kansas and Arizona? Kansas would be kind of like the Western Super Conference's version of Maryland. Get paid millions of dollars to get your teeth kicked in every fall and then show up for basketball season. Or do you take the Texas Institute of Technology, which is high-level football and high-level basketball at the same time, being in the Final Four a couple of years ago? So what's left of the Pac-12? Washington State? Oregon State? Arizona State? Utah? Let's hold off on Colorado for a moment. How do you fill out the conference? Well, call the Mountain West. Boise State? You got your wish. Joining a depleted Pac-12 in the same way that you joined a depleted Mountain West 10 years ago. San Diego State? UNLV? Colorado State? Air Force? What are the chances that BYU comes out of football independence to rejoin this conference? In the Holy War. And what's left of the Big 12? TCU? Baylor? Texas Tech? Or Kansas? Take your pick. Oklahoma State? Kansas State? Iowa State? Add the aforementioned Colorado to its former mates in the old Big 12. Houston now gets its wish. Congratulations. Kind of like Boise State. Welcome to a now depleted Big 12. Bring along SMU. Now the old iron skillet means something again. To finish out the conference, there are options. But a lot of those options disappeared when Texas and Oklahoma disappeared. Arkansas? Missouri? There's nobody left to make up for what they'd be missing in the SEC. Same with Nebraska leaving the B1G. They're not going to leave all that money on the table. It's not perfect, but bring New Mexico. Historically good basketball. 47th largest TV market in the country. That's ahead of Louisville. And Brian Urlacher. Hey, what do you guys think? Do you agree with anything I said? Do you disagree? Please, feel free to leave a comment. I'm just a lonely history teacher trying to make his way through life. Hey, thanks for coming by. I hope you had fun. I hope you were entertained while you were quarantined. If you were, I would love it if you would like, if you would subscribe, if you would share with some of your friends that love college football. And remember, if you get bored while you're stuck in quarantine, remember me. I'm Mark Haggard. I'm a history teacher, and I've gone rogue.